Ant-Man, the Quantum Rescue. Scott Lang, better known as Ant-Man, was enjoying one of the rare peaceful days he had as a superhero. Sitting on the couch in his San Francisco apartment, he munched on a bowl of popcorn while watching old reruns of Magnum P.I. It was nice to relax, especially since most of his time was spent either dodging trouble or causing it. But Scott knew better than to expect a quiet life along. Just as he was reaching for another handful of popcorn, his phone buzzed with a familiar name flashing on the screen. Hank Pym. "Hey, Scott." Hank's voice came through, crackling slightly. "We've got a situation." Scott sighed, muting the TV. "I was afraid you'd say that. What kind of situation are we talking about?" "It's Hope," Hank said, his voice suddenly tense. "She's stuck in the quantum realm." Scott shot up from his seat, his heart pounding. The quantum realm. He had been there before, and the mere thought of Hope vanishing into that strange dimension sent a wave of panic through him. Hope, aka the Wasp, was tough, no doubt about it, but the quantum realm was unpredictable. As the epic unfolds, don't forget to subscribe, like and drop a comment. "I'll be right there," Scott said, already grabbing his Ant-Man suit. It took Scott only minutes to reach Hank Pym's lab. As he hurried inside, he found Hank bent over a control panel, his eyes glued to a swirling, holographic projection of the quantum realm. Next to him stood Cassie, Scott's teenage daughter, her expression worried but determined. "What happened?" Scott asked, glancing between Hank and Cassie. Hank rubbed his forehead. Hope was testing some new equipment designed to explore the quantum realm. But something went wrong. There was an energy spike. And the next thing I knew, she was gone, pulled into the quantum realm without warning. "And we're going to get her back," Cassie said firmly, her eyes locking onto her father's. Scott knelt down beside her, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "Cassie, this isn't safe. The quantum realm. I know it's dangerous." "Dad," Cassie interrupted, her voice strong. "But you told me all about it. You've been there, and you always find a way. So I'm coming with you." Scott hesitated. He was proud of Cassie's courage, but the idea of taking her into such an unpredictable environment terrified him. Before he could respond, Hank chimed in. "Actually, Scott, Cass is right. We'll need all the help we can get. She's been learning the science behind this technology, and she knows the risks. Besides," Hank paused, glancing at the data streaming across his monitors, "we don't have much time." Scott looked at his daughter's determined face. There was no point in arguing. She had inherited his stubbornness. "All right," he sighed, "but stick close, okay?" Cassie nodded, already pulling on her new suit, the one Hank had been quietly working on. It wasn't as sleek as Scott's Ant-Man suit or as powerful as Hope's Wasp gear, but it had one crucial ability. It could shrink and grow, just like her father's. The shrinking process never got easier, no matter how many times Scott did it. The sensation of the world expanding around him as he shrank to the size of a molecule was still disorienting. One moment, the lab was enormous, and the next, the entire universe seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. As the three of them, Scott, Cassie, and Hank, plunged into the quantum realm in a specially designed transport pod, they were greeted by the mind-bending landscape of the subatomic world. Strange shapes floated by, glowing in hues of blue and purple, while currents of energy twisted and swirled like rivers in the sky. Scott couldn't help but feel a familiar sense of awe. "It's beautiful," Cassie whispered, her wide eyes taking in the sights around them. But Scott wasn't here for sightseeing. Somewhere in this bizarre dimension, Hope was waiting for them. "Keep your eyes peeled," Hank instructed. "We've tracked her signal to a region of the quantum realm we've never explored before. We'll need to be cautious." "Cautious?" Scott raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Since when are we ever cautious?" Hank shot him a look. "Just try this time." They navigated through the chaotic, ever-shifting environment, dodging massive quantum creatures that floated past them, their translucent bodies pulsating with light. Scott stayed close to Cassie, constantly checking to make sure she was okay. Despite the danger, she was handling the quantum realm better than he expected. "Look!" Cassie shouted suddenly, pointing ahead. In the distance, a faint glow flickered. Hope's signal. Scott's heart leaped. She was close. As they drew nearer to Hope's signal, the landscape began to change. Gone were the swirling, chaotic elements of the quantum realm. In their place stood a vast, shimmering city, its architecture unlike anything Scott had ever seen. The buildings seemed to be made of pure energy, constantly shifting in shape and size, yet somehow maintaining structure. "That's new," Scott muttered. Hank's eyes widened as he took in the sight. A city? Here? I've never seen anything like this in the quantum realm. "We have to find Hope," Cassie said, her voice laced with urgency. They cautiously entered the city, the air around them crackling with energy. Scott's instincts were on high alert. This place wasn't just strange. It felt alive, as if the city itself was watching them. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the glowing streets. Hope. She looked unharmed but was clearly startled to see them. "Scott? Dad?" she gasped, running toward them. "How did you?" "Long story." Scott cut in, relief flooding him. "We came to get you out of here." "What happened?" Hope's expression darkened. "I don't know exactly. 1 minute, I was testing the equipment, and the next, I was here. But this city, it's not just a random place in the quantum realm. There's something alive here." Hank stepped forward, frowning. "Alive? What do you mean?" Before Hope could respond, the ground beneath their feet rumbled. The city began to shift, the buildings twisting and contorting as if responding to an unseen force. A deep, resonating voice echoed around them, causing Scott and the others to freeze. "You are trespassing," the voice boomed. "Leave, or be consumed." Scott's eyes widened. "Okay, that's not good." The city began to morph around them, the energy buildings transforming into towering figures, giant beings made entirely of quantum energy. Their faces were expressionless, but their movements were deliberate and menacing. "Run!" Hank shouted, but before they could react, one of the figures raised its glowing arm and shot a beam of energy directly at them. Scott quickly shrank, dodging the blast, while Cassie and Hope did the same. They scattered, moving rapidly through the shifting streets of the city as the energy beings pursued them. "Dad, what are those things?" Cassie yelled, her voice panicked. "I have no idea," Scott replied, "but I'm not sticking around to find out." As they dodged blast after blast, Hope suddenly pointed to a distant building, a massive structure glowing brighter than the rest. "That's the source. The energy controlling the city is coming from there. We need to destroy it," Hank said. His voice strained as he struggled to keep up. Scott groaned. "Why is it always blowing something up?" They raced toward the glowing building, the energy beings closing in behind them. Scott led the charge, shrinking and growing rapidly to avoid the blast, while Hope and Cassie fought off the energy creatures with precision strikes from their suits. As they reached the building's entrance, Scott punched a panel, and the doors slid open. Inside, they found a massive, pulsating core of energy, clearly the heart of the city. "Now what?" Cassie asked, breathing heavily. "We need to disrupt it," Hank said, his eyes scanning the machinery. "Scott, you're going to need to get inside that core and overload it." Scott blinked. "Wait, get inside that? Isn't that, I don't know, super dangerous?" Hank gave him a grim look. "It's our only shot. If we don't, those things out there will tear us apart." Scott sighed. "Of course, it's dangerous." Without hesitation, Scott shrank down to microscopic size, slipping through the cracks in the energy core. Inside, he found a swirling storm of raw power, currents of energy surging in every direction. "Okay, Scott," he muttered to himself, "you've done crazier things than this." Using his suit's tech, he began to disrupt the energy flow, rerouting power and overloading the core. As he worked, the entire structure began to shake violently, the lights flickering. Outside, the others watched as the city around them began to destabilize. The energy beings faltered, their forms flickering in and out of existence. "Scott, hurry!" Hope shouted, her voice barely audible over the growing roar of the city's collapse. Just as the core reached critical mass, Scott reappeared at full size, gasping for breath. Time to go. They bolted out of the building, dodging collapsing structures as the entire city began to implode. The energy beings dissolved into nothingness, and the once vast city crumbled into a swirl of quantum dust. They barely made it back to the transport pod before the city collapsed entirely, and with a flash of light, they were back in Hank's lab. Epilogue, a new beginning. Back in the lab, Scott, Hope, Cassie, and Hank stood catching their breath. The ordeal had been exhausting, but they had made it out. "That was insane," Scott muttered, pulling off his helmet. Hank nodded. "We've learned more about the quantum realm in one day than we have in years." Scott looked over at Cassie, who was still wide-eyed with adrenaline. "You did great, kid." Cassie grinned. "Told you I could help." Hope smiled, stepping closer to Scott. "You never stop surprising me." Scott Lang. He shrugged, smirking. "It's what I do." As the group laughed, the feeling of relief settled over them. They had saved the day, escaped the quantum realm, and once again proved that even in the smallest forms, heroes could make the biggest difference. And for Scott Lang, there was nothing better than that.